Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Puraracharya Shruta Shruta Shri His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki ISKCON GBC BBT Founder Shri Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadramai Ki Shri Shri Gaunitai Ki ISKCON New Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Nittai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to some devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to the lotus feet Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pacharya Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24. The chapter is entitled Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva. Reading from text 62. Kriya kalapair idam eva yogina.
Kriya kalapair idam eva yogina.
Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye.
Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye.
Bhutendriyanta karanopalakshitam. Bhutendriyanta karanopalakshitam. Vede cha tantre chata eva kovidah. Kriya kalapair eva yogina. Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye. Bhutendriyanta karanopalakshitam. Vede cha tantre chata eva kovidah. Kriya kalapair eva yogina. Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye. Bhutendriyanta karanopalakshitam. Vede cha tantre chata eva kovidah.
Kriya kalapair idam eva yogina. Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye. Bhutendriyanta karanopalakshitam. Vede cha tantre chata eva kovidah. Kriya kalapair idam eva yogina.
Kriya kalapair eva yogina.
Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye. Bhutendriyanta karanopalakshitam. Vede cha tantre chata eva kovidah. Kriya kalapair idam eva yogina. Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye.
Shraddhanvita sadhu yajanti siddhaye. Bhutendriyanta karanopalakshitam.
Vede cha tantre chata eva kovidah.
Kriya, activities. Kalapai, by processes. Idam, this. Eva, certainly. Yogina, transcendentalists. Shraddha anvitaha, with faith and conviction. Sadhu, properly. Yajanti, worship. Siddhaye, for perfection. Bhuta, the material energy. Indriya, senses. Antakarana, heart. Upalakshitam, symptomized by. Vede, in the Vedas. Cha, also. Tantre, in the corollaries of the Vedas. Cha, also. Te, your lordship. Eva, certainly. Govidaha, those who are experts. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki. My dear Lord, your universal form consists of all 5 elements, the senses, mind, intelligence, false ego, which is material, and the Paramatma, your partial expansion, who's the director of everything. Yogis other than the devotees, namely the karma yogis and jnana yogi, worship you by their respective actions in their respective positions. It is stated both in the Vedas and in the Shastras that are corollaries of the Vedas, and indeed everywhere, that it is only you who are to be worshipped. That is the expert version of all the Vedas. Purport. In a previous verse, Lord Shiva wanted to see the form of the Lord, which the devotees are always interested in. There are other forms of the Lord manifest in the material world, including Brahma and other demigods, and these are worshipped by materialistic persons. In the 2nd canto, 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that those who desire material benefits are recommended to worship different types of demigods, and in conclusion the Bhagavatam recommends Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udharati tivrena bhakti yogena yajita purusham param. Bhagavatam 2.3.10. The devotees, the jnanis, who are known as moksha kama, and the karmis, who are known as sarva kama, are all aspiring to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Even when one performs yajnas, as stated here, kriya kalapai, he should always remember that the demigods are but agents of the Supreme Lord. Actually, the worshipful Lord is Vishnu, Yagyeshwar. Thus, even when different demigods are worshipped in the Vedic and Tantric sacrifices, the actual goal of sacrifice is Lord Vishnu. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 9.23, it is said, Ye piyanya devata bhakta yajante shadayanvita te pimam eva kaunteya yajantiya vidipurvakam. Whatever a man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone, but is offered without true understanding. Thus, the worshippers of various demigods also worship the Supreme Lord, but they do so against the regulative principles. The purpose of the regulative principles is to satisfy Lord Vishnu. In the Vishnu Puran 3.8.9, the very same thing is confirmed. Varnashram acharavata purushena parapuman Vishnur aradhyate pantha nanyat tat tosha karanam. Here it is clearly mentioned that the karmi, jnani or yogi, in fact everyone, worships Lord Vishnu if he is actually expert in knowledge of the Vedas and Tantras. The word Govidaha is very significant, for it indicates the devotees of the Lord. Only the devotees know perfectly that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is all-pervading. Within the material energy, he is represented by the 5 material elements as well as the mind, intelligence and ego. He is also represented by another energy, the living entities, and all these manifestations in the spiritual and material world combined are but representations of the different energies of the Lord. The conclusion is that the Lord is one and that he is expanded in everything. This is understood by the Vedic version, Sarvam Kalaviddam Brahma. One who knows this concentrates all his energy in worshipping Lord Vishnu. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Kam Pangum Langaite Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurundina Taranam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Srila Prabhupada in this purport is really making clear what he says, what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Vedestra sarveram aham eva vedya, that by the Vedas I am to be known. on Sunday, I was giving the Sunday feast class for the Tamil society, and there was a man who had visited for the first time. He's from Hyderabad, and he asked this question, that he has some understanding of the teachings in Krishna consciousness, and somehow we put Krishna at the top. But how about everyone else? All of the other demigods, Lord Vishnu, Brahma, Shiva, they're great personalities. And generally they're understood to be also the supreme. So why do we put Krishna at the top? I should have shown him this purport. And many other purports where Prabhupada is establishing that Krishna is a supreme personality of Godhead, and on what basis we make that statement. So Srila Prabhupada again and again repeats and explains and elaborates on why Krishna is the supreme. And we also see here that Lord Shiva, who many regard to be the supreme, if you read the Shiva Puran, then it describes Lord Shiva to be the object, the supreme object of worship. But Lord Shiva himself here is glorifying Lord Vishnu, Krishna. This section of the Bhagavatam is famous. It's called the Rudra Geet. So there's various geets or songs of various personalities throughout the Bhagavatam. What other songs are there in the Bhagavatam? Does anyone know? Any other? Uddhava Gita. Yes. So this is 11th canto. A large chunk of the 11th canto is referred to as the Uddhava Gita. Brahmara Gita. Can you explain what that is? Of the bumblebee. Which canto? 10th canto. And what is it?
It's Radharani speaking to the bumblebee.
Yes. And then she begins to think that the bumblebee is Krishna because she's maddened by love. This is it's showing the ecstasies of love. So the talks between the bumblebee and Srimati Radharani, the Brahmara Gita. Yes. Anyone else? Gopi Gita. Can you describe what that is?
Sung by the gopis.
Yeah.
Separation.
Yes. So in the rasa dance, in these rasa panchadhyaya 29 to 33, at a certain point there's a rasa dance and Krishna leaves that place and the gopis are in the depths of separation, and in that separation they sing the Gopi Geet, condemning Krishna but more glorifying Krishna. So they're in pain, he's left them. He's terrible, he's so cold-hearted, stone-hearted, but still they can't help but glorify him. So this is the Gopi Geet. Tavakathamritam tapta jivanam. Anyone else? Any other Geets? Gitas?
Venu Gita in Bhagavatam?
Yes. So Venu Gita, chapter 21 of the 10th canto. The Brahmar Gita is 47, the 10th canto. 21 is the Venu Geet. So the song of the flute. So the flute has its own song, and it attracts all of the residents of Vrindavan, particularly the gopis. And they describe how the ancestors of the flute are so fortunate. The bamboo, because the flute is made of bamboo, so the bamboo grows in the forests of Vrindavan, coming from the lakes and so on. So they're glorifying the waters and the bamboo, which are the ancestors of the flute. Anyway, it's wonderful. The Venu Gita, very nice. There's also the Aila Gita. Who's Aila? Anyone know? So there's a king called Purava, and he becomes very, very, very attached to Urvashi. And in the end, what happens? When they're in love, when someone's in love, what happens? Pain, suffering. That's the nature of passion. It begins with pleasure, but it ends in pain. So Purva is called, another name for Purva is Aila. And in that pain of separation from Urvashi, he sings the Aila Geet, talking about the the dangerous, treacherous nature of love and lust, actually. So anyway, there's many Gitas in the throughout the Bhagavatam. There are others also. This is the Rudra Gita. Lord Shiva is chanting the glories of his Lord Vishnu. And it's interesting how this comes about. So the story of Prithu Maharaj is now finished. And Prithu Maharaj's descendants are described in this 24th chapter. He has various descendants. His son was Antardhan, Vijitashva. When Indra stole the horse of Prithu Maharaj was doing a 100 horse sacrifices. On the 100th sacrifice, Indra was scared because he had done 100 horse sacrifices. He didn't want anyone to equal him. So he didn't want this horse sacrifice to be successful. So what did Indra do? He dressed up as a sannyasi. So Prabhupada says that this was the beginning of the false renunciates. Indra started that parampara. And he stole the horse as part of the Ashwamedha Yagya. And therefore, actually, as a result, Prithu Maharaj didn't complete his 100 horse sacrifices. So Indra, Antardhan was a son of Prithu Maharaj. He found Indra, but he didn't kill him. The Brahmana said you should kill Indra, but he didn't. So Indra gave him the name Antardhan. His name was Vijitashva. Like that, there are various sons. Then comes a son, Prachin Barishat. Grandson, or great-grandson, I think, of Prithu Maharaj. Prachin Barishat. And he has 10 sons. And they are the Prachetas. Yes. So these 10 sons of the Prachetas. And when they come of age, then Prachin Barishat instructs them. He says, now it is time, or almost time, for you to have your own children. Have your families and have your own children. So what does he do? Does he find them a nice bride and have an arranged marriage? No. What does he do? He tells them, go to the forest. Go to the forest and perform austerities. Do tapasya. For how long? 10,000 years. And of course, this is in a different age, so there's a different conception of time. We only live for a maximum of, say, 100 years. They lived much longer than they were living for 100,000 years. But for 10,000 years, go to the forest and perform sacrifices and austerities. So very interesting. Now these were young princes. You know, they lived in palaces all of their lives. They had so many servants all around them. They were never obliged to even lift a finger, we say. You know, they didn't have to do anything in their lives, really. I'm sure they had training and education and so on, probably in the martial arts, in fighting, in war as well. So of course they had to do, you know, there's some austerity in education, of course, but no real pressure. So as a result of that, the Vedic kings or princes, they were sent to the forest. They were sent to the forest in order to do austerities and sacrifices. And I think this is very instructive for us. So when they were told to go to the forest, the kids didn't argue. The Prachetas didn't say, hey, no, I don't want to go to the forest. I want to stay in the palace. No, because they were educated. They knew what was good for them. They knew that this was for their ultimate welfare. And also they were very obedient to their parents. And this is something that I also want to touch upon. What can we learn from this situation? We often hear that the great personalities, kings, or the princes in this case, they go to the forest. They perform austerities and sacrifices. Can anyone think of other examples in the Bhagavatam where individuals go to the forest, perform austerities? Dhruva, yes. So Dhruva voluntarily, he's insulted by his father, and he's a young Kshatriya, 5 years old, And what does he do? He goes to the forest, and for six months performs great austerities. Anyone else? Yes. So the sons of Daksha. Yeah, so Daksha is a Prajapati. And what is a Prajapati's main duty and concern? To increase the population of the world, of the universe. So Daksha wanted his 10,000 Haryashvas to increase the population. So before doing so, he sends them again, go and do austerities. So in today's age, we have the Garbhadan Samskar. Before devotees procreate, they're instructed to undergo the Garbhadan Samskar, chanting 50 rounds, say, and fasting and doing different things, Krishna Katha, to prepare the consciousness. So this is our version, today's modern day version. In previous times, go to the forest, 10,000 years, meditate, sacrifice, tapasya, for 10,000 years. So this is what Daksha told his sons to do, so that when they return, they're in a very sober consciousness. They've lived strict celibate life. They've worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They've dedicated their mind, their consciousness to the Lord. They're undergoing physical austerities. And what does that do? It subdues the senses. It reduces the enjoyment mentality. So that when one engages in the act of procreation, the enjoyment mentality is minimized. Rather, this is service. One is absorbed in the glories of the Supreme Lord, because the senses are subdued. When the senses are subdued, then remembrance of the Lord can be is more easier to capture. And in that way, you attract a higher caliber soul. So this is so Daksha sent. Daksha is vilified. Of course, we know about Daksha. He wasn't the best in various ways, but he sent his sons, the Haryashvas, for 10,000 years. Go, meditate, sacrifice. But then what happens? Narad Muni comes and he preaches to them. Hey, you're doing 10,000 years of austerity. You're living celibate life. Isn't it a great life? Isn't it the best life? Just stay. Why do you need to have children? Why do you need to get involved and embroiled in family life? Just remain as you are. So they become convinced. And then Daksha has another 1,000 sons. They're called the Shavalashvas. There's the Haryashvas and then the Shavalashvas, 1,000. And Daksha says, okay, Narad Muni, you're not going to touch these ones. So he sends them for austerity, but still Narad Muni preaches to them, and they also remain brahmachari. And Daksha is so angry with Narad Muni. What does he do? He curses him. He says, Narad, you're traveling around and doing your preaching stuff. I curse you. I curse you that you will never be able to stay in one place. You'll always be moving around. And Narad Muni says, hey, that's a blessing. I'm happy to be traveling and preaching. So Narad Muni is always traveling the universe, or not just the universe, the creation, and preaching to various personalities. So that's Daksha's sons, and then there's the example of Rishabdev. Rishabdev has 100 sons, and what does he do? He instructs them. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam. Very important. I want to come back to this verse 551 from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, it's nice if devotees have on their phone, if they can pull up that verse 551 from the Bhagavatam. You don't have your phone? Do you have your phone, Prabhu? It's good, actually, not to have the phone. But it's a nice verse. Rishabdev says to his 100 sons, his eldest son is Bharat Maharaj. He becomes the emperor of the world. Bharat Varsha is named after this son of Rishabdev, Bharat. And then he has 9 sons who are the Navayogendras, who we meet in the 11th canto. So that's 10 sons. Then another 9 of them are Kshatriyas. And then the other 81 are Brahmanas. Yes, that's his 100 sons of Rishabdev. So he instructs them in this 5th chapter of the 5th canto. He instructs his sons. And he tells them, Nayam deho dehan bhajam niloke kashtan karman arhate vidbhujamye tapo divyam putra kayena sattvam shuddhayet yasmad brahma saukyam tvanantam. So Rishabdev is telling his sons, Nayam deho deha bhajam. So those who have taken material bodies, who have taken niloke, in this material, in this earthly realm, those who have taken these material bodies, human bodies, it's not for sense enjoyment. This material body is not for sense enjoyment, because sense enjoyment is something which even stool eaters, vidbhujamye, those who eat stool like hogs and dogs, this is what they do. Enjoying this body, engaging in sense gratification, is something which stool eaters do. Animals do this. Strong words. Yeah? So, kashtan kaman. So kashtan, kasht means great difficulty. So people go to great difficulties. What for? For kaman, for fulfilling their material desires, their karma. So they go through great difficulties, like they say, that a donkey works so hard all day, just so that he can enjoy a little bit at night time. Yeah, hogs, dogs, camels and asses, Bhagavatam talks about. They all have these qualities. They go through such difficulty just for a little bit of enjoyment. But the human form of life, Rishabdev is saying, is not for searching after this little bit of enjoyment on the material platform. What is a human form of life for? The second half of the verse explains. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam. My dear sons, putraka, tapo divyam. This human form of life is for divine austerity. Tapo divyam. What is the symptoms of this divine austerity? Sattvam, the heart, shuddhayet, becomes purified. So when you perform divine austerity, the symptom, how do you know it's divine austerity? The heart becomes purified. And Brahma Saukyam, by this, Yasmad, Brahma Saukyam Dvanantam, one experiences great bliss. One experiences great bliss. Susukham kartamavyayam, and is anantam, is endless bliss. So this is the nature of divine austerity, because there are 4 different types of austerity. Anyone know what I'm referring to? You could say 3, but then there's this 4th, tapo divyam. So there's austerity in the mode of ignorance. Yeah? Austerity like Vrikasura. He was worshipping Lord Shiva for material gain. And what was he doing? He said he began to offer his flesh, his arms. He was offering in sacrifice to Lord Shiva. And then in the end, he was about to offer his head to Lord Shiva. And then Lord Shiva had compassion and he came and he gave him what he wanted. What was his boon? Does anyone know? Vrikasura? Yes. Vrikasura's boon was that if he touches someone's head, the head would explode. This is in the 10th canto somewhere towards the end, 80 something I think. His head would explode. So then what did he do? He received the boon from Lord Shiva, and then what did he do? He wanted to test it. Who was closest to him? Lord Shiva. So he started chasing Lord Shiva, wanting to touch his head. So Lord Shiva was running from Vrikasura. But his was austerity in the mode of ignorance. He was offering his flesh to the Lord. We also see those who worship Kali. Jadabharat was about to be made a human sacrifice for Bhairava Kali. Yeah, so this is all worship or sacrifice in the mode of ignorance. Then there's austerity or tapa in the mode of passion. Basically, when someone does something, does some austerity or sacrifice with the desire to receive something in return. That is passion. And then goodness, austerity, tapasya in the mode of goodness, like a wife. She rises early, she cooks, cleans. In traditional India, even it may be hot, summer sun, she cooks in the kitchen. Austerity, out of duty. Yeah, so this is austerity in the mode of goodness. And then that austerity which is for the pleasure of Guru, for the pleasure of Krishna, with no material motive or desire. This is tapo divyam. So we have to see what is the order of my spiritual master, what is the desire of Krishna, of course Srila Prabhupada, and dedicate our energies to this. And this is tapo divyam. And what does it do? It purifies the heart. So we just completed the marathon. It's 35 days. And halfway through you're just thinking, when is this going to come to an end? When can I just have a break? When can I rest? When can I have some time to just read and chant in peace? But we carry on. Why? You feel purified. You feel purified at the end, and you feel this bliss, this satisfaction that, okay, I did something for a higher purpose, for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. And this controls the mind. This austerity subdues the senses. And it helps us to become more sense-controlled, mind-controlled, more disciplined, more dedicated. Because in the example that we have here of the Prachetas, they're surrounded by opulence. But if one is surrounded by opulence, then the mind and senses will not be very difficult for the mind and senses to be controlled. Krishna warns us of this in the Bhagavad Gita. One think of a verse in this relation. Yeah. Which verse is it? Do you know the verse number? 44. Yes. So 244 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, yes, samadona vidyate, that for one who is attached to bhoga and aishwarya, if you're attached to enjoying and just this peace and harmony which palatial life offers, and sometimes I feel like I live in a palace also, you know, our temples can be very comfortable. But if one becomes attached to these things, then vyavasyatamika buddhi samado navidiyate. Then the mind, is very difficult for the mind to become fixed. Very difficult for one to really become in samadhi. Shishi Jagnabhaleswa Bhadramayi ki, Shishi Gauranitai ki. Samado, samadhi, for the mind to become fixed, for the mind to become absorbed in topics of Krishna, for the mind to really be able to hear the holy name, for the mind to be able to really become peaceful in Krishna consciousness, very difficult. Because the moment you try and focus on Krishna, what will the mind do? It will run to the objects of attachment. So Shastra is again and again pointing towards becoming free of these attachments. And one of the ways that a young man or woman is trained is by engaging in some austerity. And of course there's different types of austerity for men and women, for Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, Vaishyas and Shudras, etc. But this austerity is very, very important. Otherwise the attachments continuously disturb the mind and don't allow one to become fixed. Don't allow one to become fixed in Krishna consciousness. So this is why princes, in order to make them kings, because actually this was also preparation, because as princes you have a certain amount of opulence, but as a king there's a lot more opulence, a lot more opportunity for sense gratification. But a king's duty in Vedic India was what? To deliver his dependents, to deliver his wife, to deliver the children, to deliver the praja, to direct them towards Godhead. But if he himself is not doing the same, then how can he fulfill his duty? So preparation was, go to the forest, learn how to control your mind, learn how to control your senses, learn to absorb your mind in the Supreme, make your mind fixed, undergo difficulties and austerities, and in that way you will grow and develop. And the parents knew this. Parents knew that this is what is needed in order to train a child. So it doesn't mean that you torture the child. You know, sometimes parents are fearful that, oh no, I don't want my child to have to join the brahmacharya ashram and do all of these difficult things, rise so early, have a cold shower, go out and distribute books and receive so many insults from all these kami people. I don't want my child to have to go through these things. But actually this is real service for the child. This is what the child needs to grow and develop in so many ways, to become a strong, responsible, developed, sense-controlled, mind-controlled devotee. Very much required. So parents have to know what is good for their children. They have to, and therefore really train children. I know that in Indian families, the nature of parents, especially, I mean I'm sure it's in all families to a degree, but I see that especially in Indian families, the nature of parents is to really spoil their kids. The mothers do everything and the boys don't have to do anything. You know, my mother told me, just make sure you study hard, get a good education, and she did everything. And I used to fight with her to help sometimes. Yeah, because the nature is that, okay, I want my son to have a comfortable life, but this is actually not favourable. It's not favourable, because everyone should learn to be responsible, face challenges, face difficulties, and in this way an individual grows and develops. It's interesting, Bill Gates, but one of the richest men in the world, for many, many years he was the richest man in the world, but he's giving away his wealth, and he's got various foundations. He's got the Bill Gates Foundation, which is, you know, giving away billions and billions of dollars. And he said he will only leave his children a very small sum in his inheritance. He will give the majority of his wealth away, because he knows that if I just give my children all of this wealth, then they'll get spoiled and they won't learn how to live life. They won't learn how to stand up on their own 2 feet, how to be responsible, and grow and develop so many skills and abilities. So many times we see that parents show a bad example. Sometimes a father may be a drunkard and he comes home and I've heard many stories where the father comes home and he is violent or aggressive or swearing and shouting, and doesn't show the right example to the children, and then the children may follow that same example. Sometimes children are not very adherent to their parents. They have their own ideas of what's right and what's wrong. They go out and do so many things which are not so savory. But we see in the Vedic scriptures that there's a wonderful bond between the parents and the children. The parents know what it means to train their children. They have their ultimate benefit in mind. And therefore they train them accordingly and give the children what they really need to become responsible, serious sadhakas and citizens and fathers, mothers, and husbands and wives and so on and so forth. And the children, in return, they see that their parents are their well-wishers. They're very submissive, and carry out the orders of the parents. When I was young, my parents told me that I should bow down to them, pay my obeisances to them, and I did for a while. And when I became a teenager, I think I stopped, and they didn't tell me to continue. But this is culture. To learn to respect, to learn to give respect and honor to those who have given you so much. And it develops humility. So like that, our culture is very rich and very deep, and there is a reason for everything. And we should really learn to take that culture on and practice it in our lives. It develops so many wonderful skills, abilities, and consciousness. So respect for the parents is very important because it makes one humble. It makes one humble. It makes one submissive. And these are very important qualities in Krishna consciousness. Because then one transfers those to the Vaishnavas, to the spiritual master, and ultimately to Krishna. But if one isn't trained in these things from the beginning, then it becomes very difficult, because in today's society you're trained in the opposite way. You're trained to be independent, to not rely on anyone, to show no one respect. They say in the 60s, the ideology of the hippies was don't trust anyone over 30. And that's only increased in today's society, that mood. So our Vedic training is very, very beneficial for the development of Krishna consciousness. I was just reflecting on that as I was reading this section of the Bhagavatam. So I wanted to share that with you. If there's any comments, questions, corrections, please. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
His Grace Ananda Caitanya Dasa ki,
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. What they would think if you did it.
But also a little feel.
Yeah.
You will do it daily, once in the morning.
Morning. Wake up.
I think Russian devotees also often do to teach their kids.
Yeah.
So we lived 9 floors in building. We wrote this the kid before he goes to school should always go to our store, to much store, not together. So then we went for some time. Parents watched, and then when the parents didn't watch, he just went, knocked, and went away. Austerity. It's crazy that the teacher is so kind of wild.
Yeah, it's not schools afterwards. When you run into it, you feel it. Things afterwards. What's your plan today?
Shall we read a bit?
Yeah.
When I read
He's leaving soon.
Yeah.
He's cooking. He's cooking with mummy.
oh, it's also there. I could come in the morning there and then now pretty much.
There is
No. I just go and check my phone. Yesterday I wanted to book the flight, and then I told there's such a cheap flight, and I realized there's not even hand luggage inside.
easy.
That was actually really,
You're
really,
but then he's going to buy somewhere else, I guess.
from Basel. And then we've come to, it was 130 without, and then 50 per hand luggage per way.
Oh.
So then I booked the Zurich flight.
Yeah, so yeah.
And then I was actually thinking, we live in such a crazy society where when you book a flight, you have to click 20 times, no, no. And then sometimes you even see how they try to, then you don't see the option. Yeah, because it was,
Do it through third party
yeah,
website?
it was through some,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when you do it direct, then it's less so, but through these third parties, insurance, you want a car, you want a hotel, you want,
and there's
green.
4 kinds of insurances.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
when you lose your luggage,
Yeah.
when you are sick and you cannot fly, or it's a very strange world.
More people trying to learn different ways, They offer cheaper flights, but then they've got the money somewhere else. And people are careful not to get trapped.